Hello, everybody, and welcome to Plague Pals. This is Bill Corbett, and here's Maura Quint. Hi, Maura.
Hi. I was
How's
gonna
your
say, how
week
are
been?
you? It has been. I've decided I'm trying out some like new how are yous.
Yeah, this has been in our first two shows. You introduced the idea that there's nothing to say really at this
No.
point. In
So
fact,
I'm
it's
thinking
kind of
like,
gross when people even try.
right, because there's everybody's lying. So I'm kind of thinking now just like, hey, are you surviving the hellscape? Like something like that
Yeah.
acknowledges it's just total fire, or have you ventured out into the apocalyptic world today, or something that engages like that. I don't know, trying
I
something.
like that with your pleasant, sort of casual demeanor. It
Sure, yeah,
works really great.
yeah. What's been going on? You run into any demons? How's the world burning in front of you? What's up?
Smelling sulfur and the click clack of little goat hooves on your hall floor.
I mean, are you
Um,
thinking the four horsemen of the apocalypse? Are they like, you know, like a mile away? A couple. What do you think on that? Yeah, I think that's
yeah.
the only tack there is to take now.
Well, luckily, luckily the pandemic is over. It's
Right.
over.
It
It's
is.
yesterday's news. It
It is.
just sorted itself out somehow.
That worked out. All you needed was just a little like complete and total injustice and anarchy and riot and just everything that we
Yeah,
could possibly take.
just a nationwide cop riot and a military junta basically,
Oh yeah,
and that pandemic just skedaddled out of town. It doesn't want to be caught after dark. So
absolutely not.
thank you
That's
to
right.
our cops.
Why didn't they
Our,
try the curfew for the pandemic right away? They should have been on that. I mean, that's a
oh,
failure of leadership right there, is what that is.
is there anything possible but the most curdled of dark humor at this point? I mean, you know, it does not even feel like a time for humor. I even told my Twitter followers, I said that I'm just not going to be funny for a while. Like even if you accept the premise that I ever am, like that is not happening for a while probably. Do what you need to self-soothe yourself through it, including unfollowing or blocking me. But it's just going to be about the shit that's going on for a while.
I'm starting to actually think that that all of this is our fault because we talked about doing this like show as like something a little bit like kind of humorous, and we were
Yeah.
talking, you mentioned it to me, it was like, oh, the election, like we'll just kind of toss that around and and bullshit about it. It seemed like, oh, that'll be fun. And like the moment we thought we were going to do that, then there's just a fucking pandemic, just an
We are
absolute.
like living monkey paws
It's
here.
exactly right. So then it's like, well, we've lived with the pandemic for a while. I suppose we can like start to re-enter into some like levity there.
Yeah,
Like, nope. The moment we make that,
this is going to
absolutely
be
not.
the
Shut it
the
down.
locust cast next. That'll be the new title.
Yeah,
um
but we named it Plague Pals. It wasn't supposed to be that we were bringing a plague.
yeah, not brand new plagues.
That was
I
not the, yeah.
um well, for those of you who don't know, I mean, this is a very casual little discussion that I really don't like publicize in any way at the moment, not because I'm ashamed. It's just that I want to see if it gathers its own momentum. It's a very zen thing. But when we started talking, when was that? Like in February, maybe even early March.
Yeah,
Wasn't that long ago? It was, but it feels like
it was
another era, like in geologic formation.
absolutely. I walked with a hunch and was much closer.
I don't even think Bernie Sanders had dropped out of the race yet, although he was
No,
the
I think that there was like still like a glimmer
yeah,
of hope
that was the
there.
first
Yeah,
thing we caused.
that's right. We
Um,
did cause that.
but we thought about we were going to do a little podcast or something like this, a little chat up until election day, which you came up with the name for, election frauds, which I liked because I never liked claiming that I have any authority. That way, if some accidentally sneaks through, it's a pleasant surprise.
Right.
And then, coronavirus hit, and we tried this new thing before recording even word one. We
No.
changed it to Plague Pal, and then my wife got coronavirus and everything, and you got incredibly busy tracking the the shit show of legislation going on. Are
Yeah.
you able to summarize that very quickly before we move on to last week's shit show?
The legislation?
Well, yeah, basically, like what happened, because I don't think we ever really talked about that, because you were like really in the weeds with it, and it seemed mean to ask you about it at the time.
It still is. No,
Yeah,
we have, with Tax March, we have been tracking all of the relief bills that are being, that were being proposed, that were being brought out. And there were a lot of possibilities, and there were plenty. I'm exaggerating, but like if I see one, I'm like one good thing, I'm like, oh my gosh, there's so much, because we're in such a drought of seeing anything good. But there
yeah.
were several proposals for like the real sort of actual relief that you see from other countries, where people, the replacement of salary, every citizen's getting, a constant influx of money, where there was real protections for jobs. Various representatives and senators put forth a whole bunch of really great stuff, none of which, of course, went anywhere. And instead, we had the CARES Act, which passed. That was the GOP-driven Relief Act, where out of that is where like people did get the 1,200, but it was means tested.
Woohoo!
That's right. And some people got like, the check with Donald Trump's name on it, because
Yeah.
his name on it, which was,
I am just gonna buy a new house with that shit. I'm just why not have an extra?
I mean, it's always good to have. You never know when you're going to need it. Yeah.
So Maura, I kind of know the answer. I don't know the reason for this, but can you tell me why the Senate was the one, not traditionally the House, which,
The House
usually,
passed a bill too, called the
yeah.
HERE Act. It's now at the Senate, and the Senate refuses to vote on it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, the Senate pushing something through this time was, I mean, that the House was also working, but like they do go back and forth, and then they have to pass this shit. I don't know why. Other than like Mitch McConnell has just an iron fist, and so he can choose to either do something or do nothing, and that's that. Like it's really hard to get past that. But the CARES Act sucked. It absolutely sucked. Like,
why did it suck?
oh gosh, there's so many reasons.
Top 3 reasons.
Well, I mean, the $1,200 getting people money at all was like something that was crazy had to be negotiated. Like the Republicans were totally against it. What they wanted it to be was just a huge like giveaway to corporations. That's what they wanted, and they got that in there.
Those guys are struggling. They really haven't had much in recent decades.
That's right. That's all they focused on. They gave a huge slush fund, and they gave that slush fund to Steve Mnuchin, who is an upstanding young man. He's just obviously got our best interests at heart, and he gets to choose who gets it. And the Dems tried to even put in like a couple of rules to it, where like, we were going to make sure that Donald Trump can't profit off of this. In the moment it went through, Trump like signed executive order, totally erasing all of that. Just like, nope, we're going to do whatever the fuck we want. Doesn't matter. So then they sold it as a small business. I'm sorry, I'm going off, but like they sold it as like a small business thing, giveaway, and like it was going to help small businesses and like invest in small businesses. But they gave a limited amount of money. They gave that money to the banks to give out, and the banks also,
those mom and pop banks that really on every main street.
They're so trustworthy. They've done so much good. Big banks are just, we should look to thank them.
Salt of the earth.
If you can, while you're walking down the street, just write a little letter of thanks. Just stick it on your bank there.
Thanks, bank.
Bank of America, I love you. So,
Gross.
I was going to say, do you feel like icky now? Like,
yeah, I do.
Wash? Yeah.
Like, what a Silkwood shower.
That makes sense. The banks didn't just give it away to like the big corporations. They, believe it or not, did not give money to businesses that were run by people of color or actual
what do they need it for?
Right, yeah, like, or anybody who's traditionally been marginalized got no money from it. It was, just a absolute bullshit.
So after all this time, and I swear I get tired of sounding like a sort of cliche lefty, but what happened here? Like, I know that, you know, the executive branch and the Senate are in Republican hands, but to my untrained eye, it felt like pretty much the House that we worked for very hard, and a lot more than I did. But I actually did work in 2018 to make it happen, which is pretty rare for me. It just felt like they didn't show up, or they barely showed up.
Yeah, they didn't show up enough.
Yeah.
There's definitely that. I
But I
mean,
also don't want to be like a knee jerk, you know, oh, they're like, I don't believe they're all the same, but I
well,
also
they're
feel
not,
like,
and that's kind of the problem. Like, in a way, there are some progressive lefties, and there are some
yeah,
like good people in the House in particular, and a handful in the Senate. And the problem is they're not all like that, and you have Dems in name only who vote with Republicans, who like want the
yeah,
same things that the Republicans do. So even when you end up with like a seeming majority, we don't often have it because
yeah.
being a Dem doesn't fucking mean anything, basically. Like, it's just, I don't know. They like the color blue more, so they went with that. Like, red was not flattering on their skin tone. That's the most I can see from like half these guys, but
Oh God.
it's very frustrating. And that's what, with the Heroes Act, which is the one that originated in the House, that's what was like infuriating, because you could have put anything in there. Like, you knew it was going to go to the Senate. You know it's going to be a fucking
Yeah,
battle. So arm yourself. Like, if it's going to be a battle and you know that like you're going to lose things, shove everything in there. Like,
yeah.
just put it all in there. I mean, rename America to the United States of Socialism. I don't know, just everything you can think of, shove it in there. And then like let the Republicans be the ones who are like, well, we won because we got rid of changing the name of the America to, but everything else we had to give up.
Yeah.
Like,
But yeah, I mean, and it's still on that continuum we've talked about in our previous, well, let's see, two episodes
yeah,
where where it's like, is this the gang that can't shoot straight, the Democrats? Are they just like, well, I don't know, I tripped over my own political dick again, you know, like, or is it
a lot
like,
of political dick tripping.
sorry,
I love it.
the image is weird, sorry,
It just,
but
no, but it's really clear.
it's very clear. Paints a picture. But or which I think is true of more of them, especially the leaders, is like, well, we don't really like we got donors to take care of, so we don't want to get carried away. Like they pointedly, as we've said in other you know, our other shows, they don't like Medicare for all. They don't want it to happen.
Nope.
That was, to my mind, one of the main like can openers you could have opened the election with, to propose that,
Right.
given the pandemic, the fucking international pandemic, and
Uh-huh.
the fact that people like it and want it and need it. And then from there, actually, like, just beat that drum all the way to November. But no, they don't want it. They don't want it. They
They
don't want to
don't.
win.
And from being like in activism, one of the hardest things in activism is just like getting people to pay attention to whatever your cause is. Like, that's
Mhm.
that's a constant uphill battle. And here, like with the Dems, there's just, I mean, you can't have any more attention being paid to healthcare than a pandemic. Like, that's it.
Yeah,
Like,
right.
you've got it. You've got everybody's attention right now. And it's the same thing now. Like, you cannot call any more attention to police brutality
Yeah,
and to systemic racism than like right now. So if you want to do something about these things, these are the moments to seize, because you're never going to have this many people pointing in the same direction at once again. So
very well said.
it's infuriating then to see like our Democratic leadership just be like, you guys are looking at, well, what about over there? Anybody?
Yeah.
Frustrating.
Well, and the thing is, this is a good segue to this week. I mean, the whole Heroes Act, that was last week's apocalypse.
Yes.
This week,
Years ago.
I think when we recorded this time last week, the thing in Minneapolis had just happened, the
Yeah.
George Floyd thing. Obviously, an incredibly dramatic week since then. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, a couple of your thoughts. I know you have many.
I know. You have to cut me off. But I mean, the everything is terrible. The one thing that
Stipulated.
I mean, just, just get that right out of the bat. it's actually to me been amazing to see that there are these massive demonstrations in all 50 states and internationally like that. When it started to build, like I knew it was going to be big, and I saw, I live in Nowheresville, central Pennsylvania, and there was going to be like a Harrisburg protest, but we're a state capital, and we do join in on things.
Hmm.
But even then, it was kind of like, all right, well, that's good. And then I saw in like South Dakota. I was like, that's not a place where you usually see a fucking protest. That doesn't happen. And it
Certainly
just,
not for anything not involving white people.
yeah, that's right. Yeah. So that has been the one positive takeaway, is just sort of recognizing that there are in fact a lot of people who really do give a fuck,
Hmm.
and I think we can lose that sometimes. Like we can lose that feeling of solidarity because we just see fucking like some stupid fucking state enacting dumb fucking laws, often my state, I don't know, like doing just terrible things, and it's easy to then like write off entire swaths and just sort of have that feeling of like, well,
Hmm.
not enough people there, everybody's all fucking race. Like there's that instinct even when you know that's not the case. So it is like seeing Idaho protests for, against police brutality and for Black Lives Matter is like good.
Yeah.
That's good to know. That's what we need, because it's going to take all of these states, and it's going to take all of these people coming together.
I have to say, it is so weird being in the epicenter of this, and it kind of no longer is. I mean, it is and it isn't, but it has just grown so massive
Yeah.
in such a hurry that it does still feel like, yeah, the focus is George Floyd, but it has grown in a million different ways. Um, the the weird thing for me is sorting out like the local. Well, it's not that weird really, it's interesting and illuminating to see how this local thing has like so many echoes
Yeah.
across any decently sized town or city in this country has a
Hmm.
version of this going on, and certainly the roster of victims is just like endless.
Oh yeah.
But in our particular town, well, first of all, as you may know, like just shortly before we got on here,
Yeah.
Keith Ellison, our attorney general, charged the other three cops
Hmm.
with, I don't know the specific charge, but it's basically abetting murder,
Yeah.
accessory to murder, and he
Accessory.
he upped the charge on the actual murderer cop, whose name I can't remember at the moment, to second degree murder, which is much more like it.
Yeah.
And that is because of a governor who faced pressure. Like I was talking about Tim Walz last week, kind of positively. That's our governor. Over the
Hmm.
course of the week, I was like, boo.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he is in that zone where that a lot of Democrats are, like where it's just like, he says the right things a lot of the time, and he does a lot of the right things. Like he did the pandemic, he handled the pandemic reasonably well, I think.
Hmm.
But here, he is a former, longtime Minnesota National Guards person, which was one of the things that got him. Like he was from a red district. He's a Democrat from a red district. I mean, he was just like a teacher and a football coach by the time he was in Connecticut. Connecticut? God, that was a weird
That really
malapropism.
was.
Congress.
It's pretty
I
much
have to
the same
sort that
thing.
out with my
No,
fucking
no,
shrink.
a bunch of wealthy white
I
people.
can
It's
say,
like pretty much the same. That's
right.
totally fair.
It's pretty much Darien, the nation. Anyway, not Connecticut, Congress. Anyway, Tim Walz was saying some really stupid things this week, like "Here comes truth and justice and goodness. The National Guard will be called out." And it's like, yeah. And then they waded in, and of course, there are some good intentioned guys, but a lot of them are just trigger happy shitheads.
Hmm.
And so it's been interesting watching this all play out and knowing that like around the country so many municipalities are facing their own version of the power dynamic of this, including like, hey, Democrats, you've been in power all this time, why the fuck do we still have this happening?
Yeah.
And one of the most illuminating things I saw this week was a thread, I put it on my Twitter feed, of a Minneapolis city council member who is really quite left, but he detailed the history of trying to get a little accountability for the Minneapolis Police Department since he's been there. And
Hmm.
it really is amazing,
Interesting.
like how much pressure there is to not only decrease but to constantly give them more money and constantly
Yeah.
up their numbers
Yeah.
and the propaganda behind that. And he said pretty point blank, this is the horrible history of it. I can tell you right now, there is a big shift in the wind. Like, I am talking to people who never would have been on board with me a couple of years ago, who are kind of volunteering that to me, that, all right, I get it now. Fuck this. And I don't know why this particular murder did it. It's so strange. It does feel connected to the pandemic in a way that I can't quite put my finger on, except like
Well,
people were sitting around for months.
no, that's part of it, right? Like there's so much anger and fear already. So I mean, people are already on in this like constant state of anxiety, regardless, because we don't know what's going to happen. People have lost their jobs in massive, crazy numbers. We are like we're right pre-depression in
Mm-hmm.
terms of like where we are economically, which puts a huge strain on people. And no one was doing that well before the pandemic. I mean, unless you were super rich. So like
Yeah.
we already had this tremendous divide, and then it got incredibly worsened. Everyone was on edge, and then also when you look at like who was suffering the most from the pandemic, you're looking at Black and brown communities. They were more likely to be essential workers, and they
Mm-hmm.
were more likely to be refused treatment at hospitals, especially in the early days when like, oh, they were, not listing lots of things as symptoms. So like people were coming in with these sort of weird symptoms and being turned away. So I mean, there was a lot of an additional strain that was specifically being put on Black communities. And so,
Well, yeah, not to mention, P.S., like that so many of them are uninsured. Like so
right,
much of America is, but especially that demographic, that it's like, even if they did get sick, what are they to do?
right. And then, I mean, you have all of the job loss on top of it. So we
Mm,
already had a huge uninsured, and now it's like we're taking that into a crazy level of people suffering. And then,
mm,
so I mean, everybody was on edge, everybody was ready to go. It was already a powder keg. And then you have something that is just indicative of shit that has just been fucking happening nonstop. Like,
mm-hmm,
it's not, if George Floyd's murder had happened just like as a one-off terrible act by this one guy, that would have been one thing. But this is just like, fuck, not again. Like,
mm-hmm,
it was the one last thing I think that just couldn't fucking take it. And then the additional element now, because I think that's what like sort of led to it, but you also have like a government that has already made it so clear that they don't give a shit about people at all. And because of that, now we have a tremendous amount of people who aren't, they don't have to go to a job. Like they don't fucking have to be anywhere on a Tuesday or a
mm-hmm.
Wednesday. They can fucking be out there screaming because the government hasn't, done anything to help anybody. So like, why the fuck not? What else are they gonna do?
Yeah, and I would add, like, so many people, especially in the Black community, but not exclusively to, have nothing to lose. Like, if you constantly take stuff away from people
Yeah.
to the point where they kind of have nothing to lose if they come out and torch your building or whatever. And I'm not even suggesting, like, I think the restraint of most demonstrators is
Seriously. Yeah.
almost supernaturally, like, beyond what I can imagine handling emotionally.
Yeah.
But when you have those numbers, of course, shit is going to happen, and people are sorting out, well, is it Antifa or Antifa? It isn't.
Right.
I mean, the FBI even said that
Right.
Antifa is, like, it does not exist on a certain level.
Not in the way that they're being pretending
No,
to
it's such a
exist.
fiction.
No.
What it might be, though, and this, I don't know if you've been tracking this, because I have so many friends like right in the neighborhood where the George Floyd murder took place. There's some really shady shit happening with unlicensed cars, like no license plate trucks, and pretty expensive cars and
Yeah.
like ATVs and pickups and stuff like that, just parked in front of like friends' houses. Like, there's clearly like a bunch of people in the neighborhood who aren't from there, and it's not
Right.
Antifa for the. I mean, whatever that even means at this point.
Right.
It's certainly not like black people from Philadelphia coming here, because why would they? Like, they got shit going on in their own. But
Yeah.
what it is, I think, is it seems to be like some combination of Proud Boys, or Boogaloo Boys is the new term, which I
Oh, I haven't
only
heard that
heard
one.
yesterday. But basically,
Ugh.
white nationalists, either freelancing or connected to some network. And the most paranoid minds are like, well, no, it's Bill Barr's people. But,
Right.
people have found actual like plastic bottles full of gasoline in their bushes, and
Jesus.
stuff like that. So some like, and the black neighborhood, the North Minneapolis is like one of the major black neighborhoods of the Twin Cities. It's not where the George Floyd thing happened. And it's not even where a lot of the main demonstrations took place, but
Hmm.
that is where a lot of the arson and damage has happened.
Wow.
And it's like people aren't even gathered there. And then in the middle of the night, a beloved black business goes up in flames. And so that's really suspect, to say the least.
Yeah, it's really so I mean, like, I've been talking to people on the ground in various cities, and I've been basically doing nothing but just, if I'm not out doing something, I'm staring at my computer screen, like constantly watching anything that is going on. I can't look away.
It's great. It's great. It's really good for your mental health. I'm
No,
I'm
it's
doing it too.
fantastic. I gave up on
Soothing.
sleeping. Like, that's just, who cares? We'll do sleeping some other time. Like, I just stare at all of this nonstop. But, there's a lot of like conversation um, on the people coming in and like being destructive. And there's certainly destruction taking place in the aftermath or immediately following like escalations, when
Hmm.
the police have escalated a protest and have like started using violence against a group of people, and that group of people responds and reacts, and like maybe out of frustration and anger, maybe out of fucking justifiable fuck you, like whatever, and
Hmm.
there's destruction that has happened from that situation. But there is certainly like destruction coming from the outside in some places, and it is not Antifa uh, at all. But it does. I have heard the white nationalist in other places, and I've also, I mean, in Philly, for instance, I have some friends who are organizers there, and this was something they. This was before this. They used to talk about this a lot. That there would be these fucking like white suburban kids with like nothing to do, who just want to like go fucking pretend to be an anarchist for a day
Hmm.
and smash shit up, like, and then go
I have
back
no doubt.
home
I
and like play video games.
I am sure the truth is complex and not
It is.
absolutely, but it may not be as like what I really don't believe, because I don't think, just from knowing people here, knowing the community here, it's like it is not the community itself
Yeah.
setting itself on fire.
Yeah.
um, they may they may feel like they can go to like downtown Minneapolis where there's some money or something and set that on fire, like, but
Right.
they're not going into white suburban neighborhoods. Like, it's pretty predictable.
Hmm.
And this seems outside the norm, like, anyway. The other story from this, and I know they are absolutely related, but it feels like there are two things happening. Like, there was a big uprising about George Floyd's murder, like,
Hmm.
that rippled through right away. Um, but the second part of it seemed like it's not to say that it could have been managed or anything like that, but probably very predictably, the cops responded to complaints of them being too violent by being extremely ultra violent
Uh-huh.
and proving it all.
Hmm.
And so to me, the story has almost become the absolute cop riot that is like the nationwide cop riot, the
Yeah.
cop war on
Hmm.
people, especially Black people, but not limited to Black people. But the way that those two things feed each other. It's like
Yeah.
they can what they consider their function in society to
That's
be,
right.
like,
Yeah.
across the fucking board.
Yeah. I mean, that's exactly right. We're seeing it everywhere. It's not a single police department. I mean, it's not a single police officer. It's not a single police department. It's like, this is what the police are there for. They
Mm-hmm.
are there to protect property and to, outright hurt citizens, I suppose. Like, I mean, they're not in any way there to protect people. That's obviously not their goal.
They are there to protect some people.
Okay, that's fair.
People who look like you and me. I mean, honestly, I don't think
That's fair.
it's not it's not like something that always happens. Like people make the arguments like, well, poor whites get treated like shit by the cop. I can stipulate that that is probably true. But I'd say probably per capita, where there's not even a
No,
comparison
definitely.
here. But for
Definitely.
people like, you know, sort of comfortable white people, they're absolutely there to protect our class, and especially like way above our class.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and those people must not be touched or even inconvenienced. And so, however that admission, I mean, if that mission was there from the get-go. I mean,
Yeah.
people know a lot more about the history of police than I do. I don't know much, but I've had a lot of people on social media this week saying things like, well, they started as slave capture
Right.
forces.
Right.
And they never lost that spirit of, that's what we're here for. We're here to keep America like white and protect the white, capitalist class, basically, which they wouldn't have called themselves then, but like businessmen or owners or,
Yeah.
investors.
That was actually something I was explaining to my kids, which, I've had lots of conversations with them, but
Remind me how old they are. They're
first and third grade,
first and third grade.
6 and
How are
8.
they doing through this? Or like, what are
I mean,
they
they're
noticing?
because we don't have like cable TV on and stuff, and
Mm-hmm.
they're in suburbia, so they're not hearing like, sounds of tumult. Basically, they didn't know what was going on here. They knew the pandemic, but
Mm-hmm.
they didn't know about all of this, and
Kids, sit down. Mama's got a new plague for you.
it was very much like, guys, I need to tell you what's going on in the world right now. You're not seeing it, doesn't mean it's not happening, and
Mm-hmm.
I need to sort of make you aware, but but in like sort of trying to explain how lucky and the sort of, I mean, to explain white privilege to them
Mm-hmm.
basically, as they have lots of friends and family who don't look like them. Just, I know it's like an ongoing conversation, not one, and it's not the first time I've had this conversation, but like brought it back up. But I told them about George Floyd, and my youngest finally was just like, asked me like, why do the police not like black people? And I found myself being like, well, the police, do you know about slavery? You know about slavery. All right. So
Mm-hmm.
the police originated to capture slaves. I mean, like, not in a conversation that I was expecting, which doesn't mean, I'm glad to have had it. I'm glad he asked those questions, and I was glad to like try and answer, but just trying to explain systemic racism or systemic anything to a child is not,
It's incredibly complex, even for us big guys to
no, that's a good point.
understand.
I just realized I couldn't explain it to my dad either.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's fair. But
And I think there's a lot of more useful metaphors floating around these days that I think in general, the point is getting clearer as more people try to find ways
yeah,
to explain it. I even feel like, I don't know, people I know who might even be otherwise a little more intransigent. I can't say that word without sounding like an alcoholic.
a little bit. Yeah,
Intransigent, that's what I get for trying vocabulary words. Stubborn, who might be a little more stubborn about learning that it does seem like, they're more open to it. And I'm talking about, family and
yeah,
I don't know. I don't want to point any fingers here, but it does feel like, at least temporarily, and I'm not saying it's going to be permanent, because god damn it, nothing else has been really.
right.
um I really thought, like, I thought there were so many other times where this would tip off, but I don't know.
Yeah, it took all of the factors to get everybody kind of united towards it. But yeah, no, I mean, that's the thing that is, up until this point, like through all of this sort of crazy tragedy, I've had this like glimmer of like, maybe this is the terrible thing we need to turn this ship around.
Oh
Like maybe
yeah.
this will wake everybody. And I'm not feeling that this time. Like I don't have any, I've lost all of my like potential optimism. I feel like, yeah, this will just go away and people will stop paying attention and nothing will really happen, which is really a bummer.
Yeah.
Sorry to be
No, I hear you. And
like I kind of just hit the level of my
yeah,
hopefulness.
I am largely with you on that. I with some little glimmers that may quickly just dissipate.
I think it's,
But
for me it's because it's so like what would need to happen is so vast and the protections in place are so vast. Like this isn't like, well, we just need all the police forces to like do a day of diversity training. Like
yeah,
that'll do it. Like this isn't
yeah,
that.
cameras on. No,
Right,
we're
exactly.
literally talking about, and this is the first time I've really thought about this hard enough to come up with this conclusion, which, really basically agreeing with the conclusion that smarter people have laid out there, which is no, it has to be absolutely fucking dismantled as a concept. You said something about that last week, and I was really intrigued, but I didn't know exactly. Like it had been a while since I had heard anything like that. But now, like I've spent a week reading about how there are other ways of doing this potentially. And I've
Right.
even, ranted on Twitter about it. And then people are like, oh yeah, you're just going to get rid of cops and, let everything. It's like, no, of course, obviously it would have to be done in a considered way, but you do have to make some really big, bold initial steps.
Absolutely.
And those are the things that this country does not seem willing or able to do. And its leaders are just, I mean, we're getting the again, just the coldest oatmeal out of our Democratic leaders for the most part. And some of them are just such stumbling fuck ups, like de Blasio.
Oh God.
Somebody said this
So
week, like,
bad.
he has a talent of being hated by everybody. Like,
He's really good at that. I mean,
leftists hate him, Democrats, like,
the
Republicans
police hate
loathe him,
him.
like,
Like
and the police
everybody
hate
hates
him,
him.
just like everybody hates him. Good job,
He's
buddy.
it's really quite a talent, quite a skill. Oh, he's terrible. Makes me crazy. And it makes me crazy that there were people like, I just want to hear him talk, not Trump, about the pandemic. He's my leader. He that when
No,
they
well, that was the other New York disaster, Governor Cuomo,
oh
Andrew
Cuomo,
Cuomo.
yeah,
I
Cuomo.
was
But they
talking
were
about big,
liking him too.
yeah, and they hate each other too.
I
Just to make,
know.
no, Cuomo gets more props, like when he used to do that sort
Yeah, he
of
was getting yes. He got a lot of that.
self-important pandemic press conference. It was because it was the only voice besides, the monster and the White House. But that's the thing. I feel like, God damn it, Democrats at least grab the mic. At least like, just like, I
No,
don't
I
know how
know.
you can resist it. I would be all over it, but I'm a ham. I don't know. Maybe it's you need a couple more theater hams in
But that
office.
is what politicians are. They are hams. Like that's what they live for. They fucking live for it. That's the whole reason they're there is just to get that glowing sort of look at me. I'm shining and I am a beacon of truth. And that's it. Like
I
the
think
fact
that
that they're
that
not.
might have started that way for a lot of them, but now they like the fucking money. Like that's like, and that's like job one. Like
Fair.
Nancy Pelosi emerges every now and then and puts on her white
Hold a
blazer
Bible.
and does a little bit of performance art, and it's all, and people are always like, "Boo, 2 out of 5 stars." Like, and then she goes away and doesn't pass anything. Like, I don't like. How could you hold all that power and not use it? I know the answer to that. It's like because she's not there to use it, but still.
She's not interested. But what I'm more surprised is that like that there's not I mean, because this is the place, right, for like some young up and comer to like make their
Mm,
name and like be this sort of leader. And I'm surprised I haven't seen that. Like I don't. There's no one, right? Like I mean, I've seen AOC speak, and but she's almost suffered from like she's already gotten too much attention, so she
yeah,
can't
she's
really
got a
like rise
backlash
up
going on, even on
because
the
yeah,
left. They're like, she's a little too.
right.
And I don't. There's no perfect person out there.
Of
Obviously,
course
like I
not.
want a critical mass of people who are pretty good, or that'll do for me.
Oh yeah.
And there's some
Where
promising
are your
people. Like
purity tests, Bill? Come on.
what's that?
Where are your purity
Oh yeah,
tests?
that's
Everyone
right.
should be run through a very strict purity test.
My 300 item, checklist. No, my God, like that I do not identify with that at all. If anything, I just feel like the most open person in the world to someone to go slightly fucking left, and then I'm with them.
Yeah,
But nobody will even go there.
I know.
No, it's not true. There are plenty of people who are and are running on great platforms like that. Like it gives me a
Apparently, a
tiny
lot of
bit pulse.
progressives won primaries last night. I haven't gotten a
Yep.
chance to like really look into the numbers and how many people, but it seemed like there were quite a few from what I was
Hmm.
seeing.
I didn't really. I was too busy watching battles in the streets. I didn't look at the primary stuff, which is bad because it does
You
matter. And
can't
I
no,
do
but you
think
can't
like,
take everything in at once. Like it's just
yeah,
too much. Not to mention plenty haven't been counted yet. So no, it's okay.
we're still making masks in this house. Like,
I
how much can
know,
we take at once?
I know, right? That's exactly right. I mean, that when I was showing my kids too, like protests across the country, that was like my 8-year-old was immediately like, the coronavirus. Like that was his first response, was just seeing these masses gathered. He was terrified that like, which was like, that's fair. If you're right, it is scary. And what you should recognize is that what they're out there for is so terrible. It's worth them taking that risk, but it
Yeah.
is a risk and it is scary. Like, but I mean that he was horrified, which I understand.
Well, and of course, that's being cynically weaponized by like the Fox News contingents. Like, oh, I thought you shouldn't get together. I thought like you wanted to close everything, and now you're out there on the street. Like
Yeah. And then the same thing in reverse though, right?
fucking
Like
mutants.
you said you were all upset that anyone would tell you when you could
Yeah.
go anywhere, but now you're just like, it's a curfew, and if you
Yes,
stay out,
sir.
you deserve to be shot in the head. Like that's
Right. Right. That
okay.
surely is the deserved punishment for walking your dog past at
Absolutely.
8:15 p.m. Ooh.
Absolutely. Have you seen in DC in particular, like those recently? But just because it was notable the other day with the entire group that got trapped in a residential neighborhood, and some
Yeah.
took them in. That was like another moment of like, yes, it was really impressive.
Well, it felt like the movie. Did you see the movie Green Room?
I don't think I
It's
did.
a horror movie about white supremacists where Patrick Stewart plays like the head white supremacist. Very good job. Um,
Are
but
you studying
basically,
that for an upcoming role? It
yeah,
looks like you're getting in the Patrick Stewart
yes,
place.
for regular viewers of our what do we call this? A video cast,
Vidcast,
our
yeah.
YouTube show. You'll notice that I've taken my wig off finally. No,
It's great.
I actually did try to fix my thinning hair with some clippers the other day, and I was going to like, I was gonna make it short, but I just I just mutilated it. It was such a terrible job, and I did have this in the back of my mind because that I was like, it would be fun to just do it now, and it feels great.
I think it totally works. But actually, I have a question. Like,
Yeah.
do you have to reshave your head every day? How does that work?
Well, I didn't do
I
a
don't get it.
full, Walter White from Breaking Bad. Like I didn't actually use
Hmm.
the straight razor and shaving cream. I just used the clippers. So no,
Okay.
I'm not. I don't need it to be like perfectly shiny
Flush.
every day.
Got it. You
I
don't
like the
apply a little
fuzz.
wax there or anything? No,
No.
no extra. All right.
Um,
Are you gonna
but
let it grow back out, or I'm sorry, not to make this all
you
about
know
your
what? We
hair.
got it. We need.
It
This.
was
It was
just,
something to do in the face of all this too. And I thought now I can infiltrate like a skinhead gang or something.
it's true.
That's my plan.
You're
Um,
ready to go.
It really, I don't have a plan. You
No.
might be shocked to hear after working with me a little bit. It's like, I don't have a plan at all.
I was just thinking if you
I
wanted.
just gonna try not to get to that Grizzly Adams thing that we started the podcast with a couple of weeks ago. The beard where you
You've
kind of
gone to
can't eat
like
anything.
extremes though, and I appreciate,
Yeah,
you know.
it swung wildly in the course of 2 weeks.
Hey, why not take advantage of it now? If you did want to infiltrate like white supremacist groups, you're going to need like a camouflage bandana to
Yeah.
go along with that, um, which is really important that they use camouflage since they're always doing this like in a city. But it's all right; they'll just
I have
blend
to
right
go
in.
into the Panera bread. It should just be like little loaves of, tuna salad sandwiches or something.
Yeah, gas station coffee cups or something. That would make more sense.
Uh,
Yeah.
well, there's so much more to say about this, but we obviously can't say it all. And maybe just
Yep.
for sanity, let's move on to anything, anything else.
Anything
Um,
else?
I am
You know,
actually profoundly interested in it. Like, I think everybody in the country, this is somehow has gotten into everybody's consciousness, and I am grateful for it. I'm wary of it, and I hate the backlash from the cops, but it is a very clarifying moment if it
oh
is
yeah.
used well. And if it isn't used well, it's still clarifying. I just don't like that as a, it's horrible to think of this moment being such a big, um, I don't know, a big part of everybody's consciousness right now, and then landing in the same place. Because I don't think there is a landing in the same place. I think it goes to worse or better at this point.
That's the fear, is that it gets worse. Definitely. The thing that, since I'm not sleeping, I'm having those like sort of 3 a.m. moments where you just like have a thought that maybe you had before, but it suddenly has so much more weight, and like it just seems, and certainly I was aware of this before, but I keep thinking about like World War II, like
Hmm.
people in Germany, people in France, people in the UK, like regardless of even where you were in the battle, there were people in World War II that just like woke up and went to their jobs as an accountant and like just, did whatever fucking stuff they did to like
Yeah.
go to work and try and get a paycheck. And like at the end of the night, they just entertain themselves somehow. Like even if they were really invested, even if like, but they just maintained lives in a lot of ways. And I knew that, but suddenly that feels like crazy to me. That like,
Hmm.
oh right, yeah, you're just supposed to still like it's like I've been waiting for this moment, but I always thought that that would be it. We would just be so
Hmm.
consumed by it. We would just be constantly. So the idea that like, no, we're also just making dinner and like taking out the trash, but you have to take it out on a certain day because they try to come. Like it's just what? That's still happening. Okay, all right.
Yeah, and I think there's no guarantee that all that quotidian stuff will stay where it is. Like if
Oh
the
sure.
municipal structure breaks down, there's nobody taking the trash. Although we have private contractors in our suburbs, so maybe that's all that gets fucking left out of it.
Right.
Um, but yeah, I hear what you mean. It's very like the cognitive dissonance has been big this week
Yeah.
between like, oh God, this is like the battle of Armageddon, between that and the pandemic. Like we're really in the brook of revelation right now. And then like, oh, would you stop off and get some more milk and coffee? Like,
Right. Yeah. I was thinking about making a frittata today, like what?
and
A
I'm trying to
frittata.
I'm trying not to be like the whitest motherfucker in the world here and like realize, well, that is not true for everybody. That is not true for people who are
Of course.
on the front lines of protest and all that. But um, and I've gone into the city a couple of times. We're trying to like bring supplies here and there. It's about it, and donate money. That is so easy to do these days. Thank
So
God.
easy.
That may be
You have money to do it. Yeah.
the one good thing to do. Like if you've got money, you can send it, and you can pretty well vetted by
Yeah.
people you know who you can trust.
Another thing, like even beyond organizations, and I don't know if you found this, but like with social media and Twitter and Facebook, you can also directly find people who, like, if you're not in a location where shit is going down and you don't not able to get there, like I mean, I vetted through friends and knowing people have now donated directly to people who are like in DC specifically who are buying, heat resistant gloves
Mhm.
and, things of milk and like I can't be there to leave those supplies out, but I can fund you, individually doing that
Mhm.
to some extent, or at least I can contribute. Maybe not fully fund, but can make a contribution. But I'm actually like I've been thinking even about trying to go into DC, being the closest area to me where it's getting
How
really
far away are you?
crazy.
You're
2 hours,
a couple
about two and a
hours, yeah.
half into the city. So I keep kind of going back and forth on whether I should, whether I shouldn't. It's tricky. I haven't
Yeah,
decided.
it's very tricky, especially when you have young kids and like,
That's mostly, yeah, it's the
yeah.
having kids that is like a very that makes it a much more difficult decision. And it also, I mean, because I'm so constantly like trying to act as a connector for people too, being completely out of touch for 2 hours or so driving there. I'm like, I know that's dumb, but like,
Well, that has its
it's
function
something to think
too.
about.
And somebody even said that, and of course I can never remember who to attribute, but it's saying like, if you can't show up to a protest, get it. Like other people are needed too. People to give money, people to, spread word among, their peer groups who might normally be resistant. Like have that conversation. That might be your work right now.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm doing a lot of that, and some of it is kind of rudely. I'm certainly doing with some of my fans who are coming back with, but Bill, all lives matter, and I'm just saying,
Are
fuck
you?
off. Yeah, I'm
Like,
not
I'm
really
surprised you're still
conversing.
getting that
I,
though.
I was shocked. I feel
You're
like
you're
that.
not, you haven't been like quiet about political or social issues to this point.
Well, who
So
knows when somebody shows up and decides to like engage me? It might have been like they followed me a month ago, thinking I was going to be a lot of
I
fun.
I know, but even then, like day by day, I don't think I've ever seen a day where you just were like, I'm not going to speak to politics. Like,
But I do think, Maura, that some people still like they think they're being clever with all lives matter,
oh boy.
or are genuinely like they're not innocent per se, but they're like stupid. They're like they really think that that is a point worth having. And I'm
Right.
sure that whoever like Black Lives Matter wished they had maybe added also or two to the end of it, because that clarifies so much. But it was always the meaning of it. And at this point, I am suspicious of anybody who doesn't get that. Like, it's like if you're so far removed from the context of what that reasonably means, then just go fuck off. Like, don't bother me about it. Come back in a couple of years when you've learned, but I'm not going to teach fellow white people like at that level. I don't know.
I saw like a meme response that you can put out, which I saw today. I don't know if you'd want to do this, but it's a picture of the Twin Towers on fire with a caption, "All buildings matter." Like,
Ooh,
the same thing.
that's dangerous. I've
It's
seen
really
versions of
dangerous.
that too, like with yeah, and there was some cartoon where a guy's house was on fire and the other guy's house was fine.
That's
And he kept
probably a
saying,
little
"Well,
more appropriate.
my house matters too." It's like, yeah, your house matters, but your house isn't on fire right now. So can we? So yeah, like honestly, if there was somebody in real life who was younger and more naive than me, I would be patient and explain it to them like a young white dumbbell,
Idiot.
but not any rando on Twitter like that. To me,
Oh
I've
no.
got better things to do. And really, the better things to do in terms of social media are just to like act like a big loud motherfucker and keep basically saying fuck the cops in 100 different ways.
Hmm.
And yeah, I am going purposely extreme to that all cops are bastards. Like, I don't believe interpersonally every cop is an evil person to their very soul, but they're part of a system where you kind of can't be not evil.
That's
It's the
right.
good German thing again.
That's exactly right. Like, you're in that system, and you may even have. I do believe that like there are police officers who went into policing with like some sort of actual naive sort of like, I'm gonna help, like, feeling of actual caring. Like, I'm sure that that exists, but it doesn't matter.
Like like those unicorns. No, I think that might even exist. Who the fuck knows? In a quantum level, it probably does exist. I think more
Oh,
likely it's like a good natured guy who saw a good municipal job. Like a lot of the people from my extended family over the years, including my grandfather. He was just like a farm boy from upstate New York who came to Brooklyn and became a cop. And I don't remember him very well. He died when I was pretty young, but I do remember like he was thought of as a nice guy. But he
sure.
also was a guy who, like my father later recounted to me, like liked to crack skulls with his, like he liked riot control and stuff like that. So it makes me feel like, yeah, it like if you weren't already a beast, it kind of like draws that out of you because that's the fucking job.
Right. That's right. Yeah, it's very frustrating to see anyone kind of stand up for cops at this point. Like, even if you have a personal experience that's good, like, keep it to your fucking self. It doesn't
Yeah,
it just
I am
doesn't
not.
matter.
I'm not standing for it at this
No,
point
no.
at all. And I just feel like maybe that's something I can do is be extremely impolite to some of my shocked fans about
It's
like saying,
hilarious that you were born in New York. I mean, like, because you are just so in the like Minnesota nice, like, I will be extremely unpolite to you is just way more, it fits Minnesota far more than New York.
I don't know. I don't know what I am. It's kind of late in the game to figure it out too. It's like, it's just what it is. I just know
It's
that
just you.
my wig is gone, and that's, I would not have chosen that wig. Let's talk, like, we have a couple more minutes. This is our own schedule, of course, but we try to
Yeah.
keep it, within an hour 15. But um, in the absence of anything else to talk about, here's what I would love to just ask you is like, are you amusing yourself anyway, like by cooking, or is it like a series on TV you're watching, like in those quotidian moments where you're not looking at, social media, if those exist?
They do not exist. They do not exist. It's so funny. You get that like little like thing, your screen time has gone up or gone down. I think like
Oh,
last
I would
week
never go near that. My wife was doing that for a while. I was like,
it
I don't
pops up.
need to
I
be
don't know how to
harmful.
turn it off.
Oh,
Like I don't want to see it, but like once a week it'll just pop up on my screen. And
fuck you, Jiminy Cricket. I don't need your help.
exactly like that. And it was like, but the last week it was like your screen time has gone down 11%. And I was like, what the fuck? How is that possible? And then I realized, oh, because I'm using two laptops. So this is only monitoring one. So it's actually gone up exponentially,
Oh my
but
God.
it's just only catching part of it. Like that makes more sense. Yeah. In terms of, you know what I've been doing mostly that more than I ever have in my entire life is I'm playing so much trivia with like random people.
I think that's wonderful.
I've been doing it constantly. Like I'd started, I don't know, a month or two ago, just as like a way to be social before the world was on fire, and it was just the pandemic. And
Mhm.
I just started like
During those halcyon days of
yeah, during like
just the pandemic.
wonderful time when we were all just completely out of work and just stuck at home. Um, yeah, so I started like a trivia night, and I started hosting it, and people liked it, and then I just started doing it more and more. And I feel like the only breaks I have are just to like play trivia, which is so fucking nerdy.
Oh, it
Like,
is, but I want to offer you some compassion as, the mother of young kids. Like, that is just so all consuming in the best of times. And my kids are teenagers now, so they are more able to just go off and do their own thing. They prefer to, but I remember it, 10 years ago. It was just,
it's a
yeah,
lot.
there wasn't a lot of room for anything else. And especially with pandemics and
It doesn't help the
race
homeschool.
riots,
Sure.
cop
The,
riots.
the cop riots. The homeschooling is a lot.
That
And
was terrible.
this is the last week of it for our school
Same
district.
here, same.
But they're like, they want to make it fun for the kids. So it's STEAM week, which is like STEM, but with an A now,
Fuck you.
which is just like a nonsense. Yeah, it's just like, well, here's 25 projects that your kids can do, all of which take like supplies and
So do you have
setup
to
and like,
build like steampunk engines and
oh my
stuff?
God, it's nonstop. But one project that my 8-year-old wanted to do, uh, which like killed me. I don't remember if you remember this. This was like a viral video. I'm so unstuck in time. It could have been 3 weeks ago. It could have been 2 years ago. I have absolutely no idea. But it was like this weird video of like an egg that they like, then they dissolved it in a cup with like in vinegar.
I
And then
do
they
remember
add like,
that.
but each time
Became basically a rubber ball. Like,
the caption would read bigger than before.
oh,
Like that was the thing that was amazing about it. It would marginally get this tiny little bit bigger, but you were like
yeah,
turning a raw egg into a bouncy ball that was like
yeah.
bigger than before. That
Bigger
is one
than
of the
before.
projects.
That's
That's
the
one of the,
caption.
right now on my like counter, there is an egg dissolving in vinegar that will be bigger than before.
As long as it's bigger than before, I think
That's
it's
the
all
important part.
worth it. As long as it's like an angstrom bigger than before in circumference. I
But
am
now
also
that's like
bigger than before this Blake started.
that's exactly right. Every time I'm just like, that's it. That's the tagline. Bigger than
Yeah.
before. Everything I see now, just bigger than before. Every mirror,
Uh,
yeah. That's been
but you do need those, you need some sort of relief. And I think that even people on the front line of the protest, I mean, a lot of them are, of course, quite a bit younger than me and don't have the responsibilities for all sorts of appropriate and horrible reasons, which is like the economy has fucked them over.
Right.
But like, so they have the 20 something energy, and I know it's not exclusively that, um I think even they will learn, if they haven't already, that they need to take breaks. And I know self-care has become probably a justifiably mockable word in our culture, but
Yeah.
still, like, you
But it
can't
came out
function
of
after a
something
while.
that mattered. Yeah. No, you do have to like take care of yourself. What have you been doing? Have you done anything like fun? Are you watching anything? Are you
Nothing productive. No, I
binging
actually am
Breaking
getting
Bad and then learning how to shave your head from it?
I didn't learn. That was one of the
No.
problems. That's how it wound up this way.
Okay.
I didn't have the patience to actually learn how to like do the sides. So as I said when I like posted a picture of myself, it looked like I'd been in a farm accident for a while, because there was these like choppy, almost like notches of, yeah, it was terrible.
You could have
What a
pioneered a whole new like look. You should have just stuck with that. That you might have been a
bigger
trendsetter.
than before, my face.
Exactly.
Um, the thing that we mostly like, I've been getting a little more fastidious than I'm normally inclined to be about cleaning the house.
Oh
I mean, it's a
yeah.
little like, I get sick of it after a while, but I'm trying to keep on it, because there's so many people here all the time. So many of us. It's really the same number as before, but we're here all the time.
Right.
The other thing, I did
I
find a
just asked
TV
you if
show.
you're doing anything fun, and you said cleaning the house.
What the fuck is wrong with me?
That's upsetting,
That's
actually.
terrible.
It's pretty bad.
It's terrible.
Oh no.
Oh my God, what am I, like some kind of Calvinist preacher from
It's like
the
I want to send you
19th
a
century?
puzzle or something.
Yeah,
Like there's
a
joy to be
puzzle.
had in simple ways.
No, I have been doing, I've been getting out. Like, we luckily are near some pretty good hiking trails. So I get out, I walk the dog before the before the curfew. At least I took the dogs for a long walk at night, and I'm going to the dog park, which I really actually enjoy, because it's I get to talk about just silly stuff and each
Right.
other's dogs. Some people there had never quite learned the socially distanced thing, and I keep having to move
Fun.
like a step to the side. And I'm not
Hmm.
even that paranoid about that stuff like that, especially outside. But there are people who, like, you can talk without basically like smelling each other's breath. Like, that is a thing you can do.
They're learning too much from the dogs. They're gonna come up like to your butt soon and just be like, "I remember you. You
It'd
were here
probably
last
be
week."
probably be safer. I mean, honestly.
Probably would. Probably would.
But I did get into one TV show, and I have a hard time getting into big series because it's too much of a commitment.
Yeah,
Honestly, I
I
don't
understand.
have the attention span. But I hit on this sci-fi show called The Expanse, which a lot of people recommended. Not even my favorite genre, but there was something about it I really got into. And I think it was the fact that it is an attempt at doing sci-fi with some scientific accuracy in a way that isn't usually done.
Okay.
Like, what would actually happen if you were doing inter at least intersolar system flight at the speed that it's being done.
Hmm.
Like, it's potentially lethal if you don't watch out for it. It's just stuff like that. But also, it's a good yarn, and it does go to a it has I think a lot of sort of good side notes about how class structures
Interesting.
emerge. I don't know if the like author of the series or the writers of the series would be claiming that, but that's just an observation.
I
It's
feel
pretty
like
cool.
if it's in there, it's put in there purposefully. I don't feel like a lot of that slips in accidentally if
Yeah, I mean, the
it's
characters are sort
meaningful.
of mouthpieces for it, but I guess I'm
Right.
not sure there's a lot of theory there. But then again,
Got
I
it.
don't carry a lot of theory around, so I don't need. I don't. I'm pretty easily satisfied.
They're not quoting Marx and Engels and the whole deal. That's fine.
Lost
Where,
on me.
what are you even watching that on? Because I've never heard of that. Is that like Hulu
It's
or Netflix
it's
or?
on Amazon Prime, I
Oh,
think, and it's free the first 4 seasons. And it is actually satisfyingly representative. I think, like, my daughter, who is very attuned to such things, watched just part of an episode with me and was like, "That's really cool. Like, half the characters are actually women, and they do science really well, and it's a good representation of races." And it's like,
interesting.
that is a bonus to me on a good story. It's
Right.
doesn't mean as much to me if a story is boring, like anybody, but it really is kind of cool how casually it's done. Oh, and gay characters, like, It's just a fact of life in this world. So
Good.
cool.
Yeah, that sounds really interesting. I have never even heard of it. So now I have something else to check out because I think I still have Amazon Prime that I'm stealing through my mom or something for like another
Yeah.
2 weeks. It'll give me something to do in between making eggs bigger than before.
Bigger than before. Well, before we get bigger than before, I'm trying to think of a way to work that into the goodbye here, and
it's hard.
yeah,
I think it just stands alone. You just throw it out there anytime. It's just kind of like it's like a good like just filler sort of sound.
So, just before we go, like, do you have any plans for the summer with the boys?
I don't know. I mean,
or should I not ask you that on a public forum? Like, send people.
My children who look like this and are this age will be at this location at exactly this time. No.
Chill at all.
It's totally okay. No, I don't know because I'm still really confused about like what we can do or should do or like I'm really lost in all of it still. Although I did hear that there's potentially they're looking at a vaccine by the end of 2020.
Wow.
This is what I saw, like a breaking news thing on that the US should have 100 million doses of Moderna's COVID-19 vaccine by the end of 2020.
I'm sure it'll be reasonably priced. I'm sure everyone will get
it'll
it
be
for
really,
free.
really easy to get, very equally distributed, undoubtedly.
This is how I feel like a trauma victim. It just feels like the first question that comes to mind is like, how are we going to fuck this up now?
Oh yeah, definitely.
It just feels like, I don't know. It just occurs to me I didn't put my light on. Like you have a good whatchamacallit light. Wait a second. There. You can see the full glory of the cue ball.
That's
Jesus,
right.
that really is extreme.
It is extreme.
It's bigger than before. It actually is. All right, I'm going to turn that light right the fuck off. Back into the shadows, living Eggman.
Who knows what Maura. Evil lurks in the hearts of men. Good to talk to you.
Always good to talk to you. Take care. Keep in touch. Oh, shit. That's Garrison Keillor's sign off, isn't it?
I did the shadow. You did Garrison Keillor. We're really going back in time here.
Woof. But yeah, I hope you get through the week. I'm interested to see where we land next week. I mean,
I hope we don't bring anything else upon. I mean, probably an alien invasion by then, but we'll have a lot to talk about.
Come on down, guys. Come on down and sort this shit out.
Yeah. You can't do any worse than we have.
All right. Have a good one.
See ya.
Bye.